Now we get to the shitty stuff. The doping. I can't call it doping. It like taking a melatonin for jet lag at 2:30 in the morning in Cincy and having, like, think of how many things had to go wrong for Iga Swiatek to get popped for melatonin and something that was contaminated in melatonin. And what does contaminated mean? I'm sure some of you all have kids. Some of you all might deal with it in your own way. A lot of times, something as simple as being gluten-free, right? You'll see it on the packages. This was mixed in a facility that also does things that contain gluten. There's a risk of contamination. Contamination means that like it could be as simple as that, right? It's not some weird thing where like GNC makes like there's fucking no chance that everything at GNC, you're getting contaminated substances from the entire thing, right? Because they're all produced in a certain facility. Clean out. It's just unfortunate for her. Obviously, a negative test in Paris at the Olympics, negative tests in New York. So this isn't some ongoing thing. It just sucks. It just sucks because the headlines people will say, and the dumbest people in our sports will be like, "Oh, doping." It's like have you taken a melatonin before, Techie Sean?
Quite recently.
Yeah. I've taken melatonin before. Who's to say ours weren't contaminated? And are we going to continue to like clutch pearls about 1/1 billionth of a gram of something or contaminated melatonin that didn't have any performance enhancement? Like what are we trying to solve with the ITIA and then to WADA? What are we trying to solve for? Performance enhancement, correct? That's basically, we want to stop performance enhancing drugs. Now, if we're seeing simply like, if we're seeing, and all the scientists are telling us in the independent tribunals with people that know a lot more about all this crap, the people that knew what clostebol was 6 months ago or 4 months ago, those types of people saying, well, it didn't enhance performance at all, then why the fuck do we care? Why do we care? This is a quote from the Director General of WADA, Oliver, last name I can't pronounce. The quantities found are so small that it is possible to contaminate yourself by doing even trivial things. I understand the public who thinks we are all naive and that we drink it all. But the reality is different. There is a problem. If we wanted to simplify our lives, we could impose new thresholds and not encounter all these cases. But the real question is, are we ready to accept microdosing? Where do we stop? Microdosing for melatonin? What's a bigger problem? And then I went to the ITIA site, and it's basically like every single supplement you take, 30% of positives come from a contaminated supplement. Are we saying that as pro athletes, we can't take on the risk of taking supplements, but also flying around the world for 11 months straight, playing the most physically demanding sport, in my opinion? You know, you can play in Memphis. I once played Memphis on a Friday and Dubai on a Monday. You need something, right? It could be elderberry, for fuck's sake, like to keep your cold away. I don't know. I'm sure that can be contaminated. I don't know. And people are like, how do you think? You never tested? I never did. Ever. I was insanely careful. Swiatek taking a melatonin at 2:30 in the morning doesn't mean she wasn't being careful. Now, the trainer for Sinner, different story. That was irresponsible, completely. I don't think he knew. But yeah, do we need to test for 1/1 billionth of a gram of something? That's the question. Maybe you disagree with me. If there is what is the level where it enhances performance? If it's not 1/1 billionth of a gram, as everyone has said, what is it? Maybe that's where we should move the testing levels to. As soon as it starts enhancing performance, maybe that's what we should be testing for. Until then, what the fuck are we doing? And why? Like the tests, and people are like, oh, the tests have gotten better since you played. So yeah, but we have to adjust. There's a legal threshold for caffeine. For caffeine. With drug testing. So should that threshold be like, is that, what if we were 1/1 billionth of a gram of caffeine? We should be testing for things that enhance performance. And it should be a no doubt that if you have that amount in your system, it wasn't a simple contamination thing where it was out of your system by New York a week later. It's not a thing where you pass drug tests on both sides of an 8-day period between Indian Wells and Miami if you're Sinner. So I maybe you don't think the same thing that I do as far as the thresholds. That's just my opinion. Is there any value in us testing for something contaminated in a melatonin that doesn't enhance performance? My opinion is no. My opinion is no. Swiatek taking the plea deal, people are like, why did she do that if she was in it? Because you just don't know. Look at what Sinner's going through. Where it's like, Wada's, we're going to get you. And he thinks he's going to have a trial and some clarity before the Aussie Open. Now they're like February 11th. So just think about that while you're training and while you're in Australia. So I don't know. Like, oh, they still suspended her for a month. Kind of. They had to review the case and she was off for 22 days. And then they got clarity around it. And they basically said, okay, we want to save face. Let's just make a round number of you were suspended for a month and eat the 8 days while you're training somewhere. That's not, whatever. That's not like a real thing. That's not like a real suspension. And it shouldn't be. You take a melatonin when you're going from Paris to Cincinnati and you have jet lag, and then you take it at 2:30 and someone shows up to test you at 6:30 a.m. Like, so many things went wrong. I don't think any less of her. I don't. The thing that's interesting is I'm always obsessed with precedent, right? So they will say that the precedent was set that she was suspended for a month. I don't know how Sinner gets any less than that because it was Swiatek. It wasn't someone on our team. It wasn't, it wasn't as if someone else did it to her like the Sinner case. If assuming we believe what the story he is told. I'm not telling you have to. I just don't think that he would risk his entire career for something that didn't enhance performance. I've said it many times. If he knowingly did it and got zero benefit, then I'd actually take a larger suspension just for stupidity. So I don't know. But what it does is now we're looking at that February 11th date for Sinner and WADA. Does WADA feel like they have to do something? Just lazy back of the napkin type stuff. If it's a month like Iga, which I feel like almost at this point they have to do, like they've set precedent where, his is. I still think I'm not going to go after Sinner because I don't think he knew. I don't think he is that dumb. I just don't. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll never know. We'll never know. I don't think he's that dumb. Best player on earth and worst doper that's ever lived. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's a realistic scenario. But with Swiatek, they can bluff that they've actually suspended her a month. They haven't done that. She just took off the time while they were investigating this case. And then they investigated it. They said, everything you told us is true. It was contaminated. We tested other things in the same batch. They were all contaminated. How could you have known if it wasn't? Like, imagine getting popped for something, trace elements of something that wasn't actually listed on the bottle. How do you defend against that? If you're a player, how do you defend against that? No supplements. That's not a realistic solution. Jet lag, all these things. Like, you have to be able to operate as a professional athlete. Like, you have to be able to, the guardrails have to be clear. If trazimamaziclum is not on the bottle and you check the things that are on the bottle and it's been approved by your team, does it mean you can't use a sleeping aid ever? That seems extreme to me. I don't know. But, okay, so if it's 1 month, March 11th, right? That's borderline Indian Wells, can probably play Miami. If we go to April 11th, he misses Indian Wells in Miami, which sucks, not the end of the world, right? It's 3 months, which is that kind of has the feels right now. Tough to go 6 months when Swiatek got a month. Tough to go 1 month when Swiatek got a month, because it was your team that like knowingly was dumb. May 11th, Roland Garros starts May 25th. May 25th. So I've been sitting here going, I saw the news release where it's like February 11th. I'm like, can you get your shit together and let this guy have some clarity? Better or worse? I'm not saying like he needs to protect his mental health. He's in a situation. His people have put him in this situation. So it's not as if I'm like crying for Jannik Sinner, but if you make this big announcement in like late September that you're going to go after him and then you drag your feet for another 6 months, it just comes off as completely unprofessional. And then saying like, and then the director going, well, you can bump into someone on the street and that could be a contaminated, like they just look so unorganized and stupid, frankly. So there is a chance, even if he gets a 3-month suspension, he doesn't miss a slam, which if you're Jannik Sinner at this point, you go, thank you, done. And also, there's no chance that Sinner plays, or he shouldn't. He shouldn't. Once he finishes Australia, similar to Swiatek, where she got credit for the 22 days, right? It's when you don't play and you get credit for when you have not played. He should not play Rotterdam. He should not play any of these events after Australia. Play Australia. Stop playing until that 11th date. You get 2 weeks of credit on a 3-month suspension. You get to build. He should not be playing before that hearing after Australia. 1 month, doesn't really matter. 2 months doesn't really matter. 3 months doesn't really matter. Anything over 3 months, if he gets to 6 months, that's brutal. Then all of a sudden, you cleared 2 weeks before the US Open? Something like that. 6 months is brutal. 6 months is like you're screwing. That's a big one. That at this point, that's what I thought he would get when they first announced it. Now that feels steep, only based on the precedent they set with Iga for a no fault, no negligence thing. So that's my opinion. Can't wait for the comments. You guys are always so rational. You're not all the time. You're not rational all the time. Most of you are. Some of you are nuts. But that's why we like it. That's why it's discussion. This is just my opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right. I do feel like I have a little bit more insight and I've lived through it a little bit more, but c'est la vie. Some of you are going to be like, you test positive, you're lifetime ban. Yevgeny Kafelnikov said lifetime ban. Lifetime ban for melatonin.
Sounds right.
Yeah. Someone else going, our sport is cooked. Melatonin. Our sport's pretty fucking great. Pretty great. I have a lot more respect for our sport than to close the door on someone taking a melatonin and throwing feels like a desperate grab for attention as opposed to actually having a moral set, especially when a lot of people, no one specific, when a lot of people expect understanding and forgiveness for the times in their life that they've really screwed up, but then give none of that to anyone else. Bothers me endlessly.